Okay, I'm going to touch upon the Human Capital Index. Indonesia is at the 87th rank. Now, what does that say about Indonesia?
So we ranked a total of 157 countries. So it actually means that Indonesia is in the bottom half of the countries. Now, when I first visited Indonesia, and I visited actually Wish Srimulyani when she was a World Bank employee, World Bank staff, we noticed that the childhood stunting rate, meaning the children who are malnourished and understimulated so much that their height is 2 standard deviations below what it should be, was 37%. And I was shocked and very worried. And President Jokowi had just taken over. And I said, you know, this is like an emergency for you. You really have to take measures and take action as if it's an emergency. And he did. So President Jokowi has really focused on improving human capital outcomes. And so for us, even though they're 87th, we see one of the most aggressive governments in terms of improving those outcomes, making sure that they reduce the rate of childhood stunting. You know, Indonesia by law has to spend 20% of its government budget on education. So it's not necessarily that they're not spending enough of the budget. 20% is a good number. The issue is, are you getting the outcomes that we want? Now, the Human Capital Index, the reason we think it's so powerful is it doesn't measure inputs, right? Because you know, the countries, if we just measured inputs, they could say, well, we're going to put more money into it. It doesn't matter. The outcomes are what matter, right? So because we're so outcome focused, Indonesia right now is asking us very difficult questions. Okay, so how do we improve our outcomes? How do we improve learning? How do we reduce childhood stunting? How do we improve under 5 child survival? And so I think that Indonesia is going to be one of the fastest movers. The program that's been put together right now on reducing childhood stunting is one of the best I've ever seen. And last time I was here, we went to Lombok and visited the program. It is an excellent program. It takes all the best lessons from all over the world and is now bringing them to Indonesia. And the health workers that I met were extremely impressive.
Is there a certain project or strategy made specifically to increase this number, the Human Capital Index in Indonesia?
So I think that the fact that Indonesia is looking so intently on what their education dollars are getting in terms of better learning outcomes, that they're so focused on reducing childhood stunting. I think those 2 measures will have the biggest impact on improving Indonesia's ranking. This is one of the most aggressive programs I've ever seen, and my own sense is that I'm very optimistic that Indonesia will improve its ranking over the short term.
All right. Now, Mr. Kim, you're very familiar with Indonesia and certain Indonesians, I guess, like Sri Mulyani and Pak Joko Widodo, of course. Now, but when we meet you, we ask a lot about the World Bank, your projects here, and your plans with the Indonesian government. We don't really talk about you a lot. So I just wanted to know, because a lot of Indonesians don't really know that they know that you're the president of the World Bank Group. What they didn't know is you probably used to hate World Bank.
Yes.
And that's true, isn't it?
Well, you know, it's not that I necessarily hated the World Bank.
You disagreed with the World Bank.
Yeah, I knew that the World Bank was really important.
Yeah.
But it's...
This is, what, 20 years ago, 25 years ago?
In the 1990s, early 1990s. Okay. So 1994 was the 50th anniversary of the World Bank Group and the IMF. And I was part of a group called 50 Years is Enough. Okay. And it was a movement to try to close the World Bank Group and IMF on its 50th anniversary in 1994.
And you were there.
I was there. I was part of it. I went to demonstrations. I went to teach-ins. It was a lot of fun, by the way. And the specific criticism I was making is that the World Bank is too focused on GDP growth and not focused enough on investing in people.
I see.
Now, that actually started to change in 1995. When Jim Wolfenson took over as president, he focused much more on the human face of poverty, and he focused much more on increasing investments in health and education. But you know, partly because in the early 1990s, the bank was so focused on hard infrastructure, I think the bank did have an impact on the way people think about what you do with the World Bank loan.
Okay.
And so many countries still are thinking, if I get a World Bank loan, I have to invest in roads or energy or rails, because those are hard infrastructure, those are real things. Health and education is soft. What we're saying is, no, they're not soft at all.
Okay.
In fact, with the way the world of work is changing, if you don't dramatically increase your investments and improve your outcomes, you're not going to be ready to compete in the economy of the future.
Okay.
And so not only am I glad that we didn't win the argument, I think, I'm actually very glad because the World Bank is playing an extremely positive role today.
Okay.
And now, after 6 years in the job, we're at the point where we're now taking investments in people, the thing I critiqued in 1994, and putting it at the top of the agenda.
Okay.
And only the World Bank could have made that argument. I mean, there are other indexes, there are other rankings out there, but it's only the World Bank that can say to ministers of finance, if you don't pay attention to investing in your people, you are not going to be able to grow your economy and compete with other countries.
Okay, that's an interesting take. You didn't actually hate the organization, but you thought that it was going the wrong way, so you took part of it.
And then for 20 years, I didn't do much directly with the World Bank Group. But then, in 2012, out of the blue, I found myself president. And the first 6 years, I focused intently on things like infrastructure investment. I focused intently on things like making the bank more efficient, on climate change, on refugees, things that the bank had not done before. But now, in my 6th year, I feel it's time to go back and do something that will be game-changing on the issue of human capital. And we hope that that's what the index becomes.
Mr. Kim, thank you very much for your time with us.
Thank you so much.
I hope you enjoy your time in Bali.
Well, thank you for having me on, and congratulations to the people of Indonesia.
Thank you.
Because not only are they dealing with these great tragedies, but they're now also able to host so many of us and give us a real sense for the potential of this country, and also the wonderful, wonderful kindness and generosity of its people.
I believe it's our pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Itu tadi perbincangan bersama Presiden World Bank Group, Yong Kim, tentang apa yang sedang berlangsung di Bali saat ini dan apa rencana dari pemerintah Indonesia bekerja sama dengan World Bank untuk memperbaiki Capital Index atau Human Capital Index di Indonesia.